I'm Tom Curran, and I'm here with Chuck Dixon. I want to talk to Chuck a little bit about his involvement with the Pennsylvania long rifle. Chuck, how did you get involved? How did you even get interested in the long rifle?
Thomas, is an important question because there's been some misinformation of where I came from and how I got started, because I've never really told the story specifically to anybody.
Okay.
It just pick up bits of information. And it started in the late 40s. By the time I was 10 years old, which would have been, say, 46.
Okay.
And the location is in southern Illinois, a county by the name of Hardin County.
Okay.
A county which, up to World War II, did not have electricity or paved roads. And the electricity that came in there was the Tennessee Valley, TWA, Tennessee Water.
From the dam project.
That's right. And that brought in just prior to World War II electricity. And the reason it developed to somewhat during World War II was in the county was manufactured fluorspar primarily with some lead and zinc. But the fluorspar was needed as in the process of producing aluminum. And World War II brought on a large consumption of aluminum. So the county became a strategic area for the war production, right. Even though it was sparsely populated and not up to modern, we'll quote, modern lifestyles. I was raised on farm, one of them located on the banks of the Ohio River. So I spent a lot of time on the Ohio River, and the location was not far from Cave and Rock, where historically people want to know where the big cave was when the pirates used to hang out and so forth. So this is sort of a history of the area.
On the Ohio River?
Yeah, on the Ohio River.
Pirates?
Yes. They had pirates all the way through history up till 1900.
We don't have pirates anymore.
I don't know. They might. We considered ourselves pirates when we were roaming the river. So, so they robbed flatboats that was coming down.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
people heading west.
There was people. The Ohio. See, the people moved across country from out of Philadelphia up the rivers, so river water. The country was developed across waterways, so the Ohio River became important.
Was vital.
Up and down the river. I read the history of Abraham Lincoln, him pulling rafts up and down the Ohio River, for instance. Mark Twain.
Yep.
Riverboat. So river traffic was important. In World War II, there was a lot of river traffic because we seen barges loaded with military equipment, tanks and stuff going up and down the river. So, anyways, it was a county or a location that was, say, 50 years behind the rest of the country as far as modern things like electricity or whatever. So, there was still people who was aware of or using muzzleloading rifles for sporting purposes or even for hunting, similar to what occurred out here at Charlottesville with the local Pennsylvania Dutch.
All right.
So in the 40s, late 40s, a box of 22 shorts might cost you less than 50 cents a box, but that was a lot of money.
Right.
And whereas a can of powder went a long ways in a little 32 or 40 caliber muzzleloader, you only use a pinch of powder, and as was done originally, not the big loads you hear about now. So anyways, and the guns were available just for asking, what's that old thing set in the shed?
Okay. They were outdated. Nobody wanted them.
Nobody wanted them. They were into 22s and single barrel shotguns.
So you had original guns available.
That's what I would. Of course, that's what I picked. The original gun. And another thing is guns that had been damaged or broken up. I even have built 2 guns around barrels that I found in gardens used as tomato stakes.
Okay.
They were driven to the ground. And an old NRA magazine published in the 30s explained how to recut the barrels. So I wrote refreshen the barrels and make them useful. And so in the early 1950s, I was putting together muzzleloaders, so to speak.
Okay.
This was on the percussion. We didn't see flintlocks. They were just poor, low-quality percussion guns because that was the nature of the people that lived there. We didn't have the fancy Pennsylvania rifle.
Right.
We had the later, was available later percussion guns. And
A lot of those flints got converted anyway.
Converted anyways, but we didn't see the real fancy flints because the people that lived there. You'll probably want to edit some of this out because I'm going to tell you some history about the county that's not really related to guns.
Okay.
It was a county that got settled late, much after Daniel Boone era. Although it was the Daniel Boone type people that moved in there, the names of pharaohs and so forth that moved into Hardin County came from out of western Kentucky.
Okay.
And as my family did. And Dixon had moved from Carolinas to follow Daniel Boone to western Kentucky, and then eventually they migrated into this part of Illinois, which reason it wasn't settled earlier as other parts of that country is they had a weed that the cows would eat the weed, and babies would get sick on the milk.
Oh,
children would. And it wasn't until around the Civil War times or so, I'd have to go to the books to get the details. Some woman discovered this, and of course they eradicated, pulled up all the weeds, got rid of the weeds, and so then the cows wasn't passing on this fever that would children. So then it was safer to.
But still, this area has historically been behind the times.
That's right. Yeah.
Developmental.
It developed late, so it stayed late.
Gotcha.
And it was other than the fluorspar and lead zinc, which was mined there. There was World War I didn't need a little bit of lead. Aluminum wasn't a big thing. It wasn't until aluminum got to be building airplanes.
Right.
They had to look for aluminum, and the aluminum and the bauxite, of course, came from the southern states. But the process of producing, they need fluorspars of flux in the process, and it could be imported out of Mexico or South America or even I think France or Spain or somewhere. But you see, the war put it into a lot.
Right.
So they needed to find a local source, which they had in Illinois.
Okay.
County. Anyway, that aside, that's the development of the county. Now, so a great uncle of mine, when I was thinking about sophomore in high school, gave me a muzzle-loading shotgun and a complete rifle that was functional.
Okay.
And this first rifle, I got my first squirrels, which was something never to forget. The first squirrel you get with a muzzle-loading rifle, And other than a couple of fellers explaining to me how this was done, they had a gun shop, which was a muzzle-loading gun shop, which wasn't being used anymore, but it dated back years earlier, around the turn of the century, when there was muzzleloaders popularly used. And they took me into their shop, and they showed me how to. It was something you thought would be there forever as a young kid. You never thought this would pass, and so you didn't take pictures, and you didn't. But here was the work benches and the tools, and I got to spend some time with them. They recut the rifle and showed me how to do this.
Isn't that fantastic?
So I got a one-on-one experience, which was short-lived. But at least I did touch the past.
Right.
And so that's that, and collecting these guns, which were basically for asking. That's how I got started.
Okay.
And putting guns together, seeing how they were constructed, studying them through that process, is how I developed the technique of the ordered process of building the guns in the book, How to Build the Pennsylvania Long Rifle.
Okay.
That was all self-taught.
Okay.
All self-taught. But at the time the book was published, I had only garnered what you might say the Lord gives you. There's a simple process. You start at the lock and you work out.
Right.
The lock and the touch hole.
Right.
You work both ways.
It's like the foundation of the house. You can't put the roof on until you
That's
have
right.
your
And that seemed to be the foundation.
Right.
Not
right.
the butt plate or the nose cap. You
Yep.
had to start at the focal point of the gun, which was at the pan.
Yep.
or the drum.
Right.
And that seemed to be logical, and that's seems to be the accepted process of designing and putting together the parts of what we call a Pennsylvania long rifle.
Okay.
So I hunted with long rifles. I hunted with muzzle-loading shotguns. Learning that we didn't have wads, didn't know what it was, but I soon found out that hornet's nest would pack as tight as a wad, and that's what the old timers used.
Right.
In fact, they have some people will tell you that a Hornet, they can't even reproduce a shotgun wad that gives you the working capabilities of a good wad of the hornet's nest.
This is a good time of year to go get it.
Yeah, that's right. You get them in the wintertime, after they left.
Not in the summer.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we had quail, lots of small game, rabbits and so forth. And so even though I had some modern shotguns, I always stuck with my muzzleloaders, and
Right.
that was the thing. And that's how that's the synopsis of how I got started.
Oh, neat.
I just happened to be raised in the area. There was some connection with the past. Not having the wherewithal to buy the latest gun, which usually is just a single barrel, most people didn't have on.
Right.
They wasted ammunition.
Right. You know, learn to be a good shot, too.
Yeah. Well, for instance, my dad had a Browning automatic, which he'd had when he was a youngster back in the 20s and 30s. And of course, in his day, they hunted quail, and they would shoot them by the hundreds in a day's time.
Okay.
When quail were plentiful. And of course, they didn't waste them. They shot them to eat. But anyways, because that's supplemented. We actually hunted as a supplement to our diet.
Gotcha.
It was a sport, but like we raised rabbit dogs and bird dogs and coon dogs and trained all these. But when we jumped up a rabbit, we would run it 3 or 4 times, a circle, because they're running a circle.
Okay.
And after 3 or 4 times, Dad says, "All right, you can take that one for supper." He wouldn't let me shoot the first time around.
Okay.
So it was a sport, but it was also for dinner.
Right.
And so hunting, and we didn't take target shooting serious, just as long as we could hunt with it. He was he bought these farms, which he was converting them over for a school, which was Swedenborg. Okay? And so there was a transition here in my time to be here.
Okay.
But he seen me working on these muzzleloaders in my spare time. And then at 70 and 75, he mentioned the fact that he was ready to change the farms over to what his original plan was, and I was looking to get back in the mine industry. But he suggested, he said, 76 is coming up. Why don't you see if you start a business? And so Charlie Cole actually wrote up the first
As in
flyer.
the bicentennial?
Yeah, the bicentennial, 76.
Okay.
So I opened up the shop in September 1st, 75. I started making rifles, about 1 a month, to sell. And I dovetailed, supplemented my income from the farm with this, and dovetailed them together. As one grew, the other one backed off.
Oh, okay.
And so that and the Game Commission in the meantime has started flintlock hunting season.
Okay.
So it was
timely.
It was willed by the powers that there would be the flintlock hunting season. The experience I had, the bicentennial coming on, there was a surge in interest in flintlock rifles, muzzleloaders.
Right.
And so I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, as destiny proved. So by 81, then the shop had grown to the point it could be moved to the current location.
Okay.
I bought the property and went to the current location.
All right.
And then the Gunmakers Fair starts in 83.
I missed the
26 years.
10 years.
26 from 78. 85. There, we'll look right here.
Well, I have to say that coming to the Gunmakers Fair is like coming home.
83. First year, 83.
You were talking about the fair, when it got started, and I just have to say that the fair to me is like a family get together.
Yeah.
It's just the most wonderful event, and that's got a lot to do with the way you set it up, your personality.
Okay, let's talk about your. It's not just your. It's a lot
It's
of people.
our.
That's right.
Yeah, and
Let me tell you.
you correct me every time.
Yeah,
It's not my fair. It's your fair.
It's the Gunmakers Fair at Dixon's.
Yeah.
It just happened to be at Dixon's.
Okay.
The Lord provided that. The Lord had to have the location. So I said, "Well, let's see. Where should it be? Okay, here's a spot. This will work."
Right.
Let's talk about. I talked about this with Tom Ames last night, so it's fresh in my mind. How did the concept come to be, and how did it get started? Who was involved? two people will be talking, as an example, two people will be having a discussion about just anything.
Right.
And all at once, the discussion gets involved around a principle, a concept or something, and they'll both walk off and go their separate ways then. He goes back home, the other one goes wherever. And they both thought they came up with, I thought about something. This is my idea. If you get to thinking about it and back up, that concept, that idea came from the conversation of two people.
Right, it's a collaboration.
A collaboration. So we tend to think, that was my idea, and the other guy tends to think, it's my idea. You see the conflict?
Right.
Well, here, let me explain the Gunmakers Fair. I take credit for thinking the thought. I was giving away little things to my customers. Like once a year calendars, for instance.
Okay.
Give us, something like that related to. I thought, it should be more than that. And people were bringing in guns to. We see guns periodically during the construction. How am I doing now?
Right.
And then it's showing somebody. What are you working on? What are you working on?
Right.
I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I get these makers together?
Yeah.
And this was in '83. We'd been in business since '75, and so we had built some client, backlog of clients. So I thought, that'd be nice if I get these guys together. So I started talking this with other people. Kit Ravenshire.
Okay.
Richard Hoyser.
Yeah.
Now, I hesitate on naming names because I'm going to forget people, okay? So there's other people who had to be involved in this conversation.
No, I understand.
But, so Kit got real excited about it and wrote up the first flyer. In fact, the current flyer on the Gunmakers Fair is the first opening of the first page, except for some addition had to be added, is Kit's words. He's the one that named it. I said, what should we call this get-together? He said, Gunmakers Fair.
Okay.
So I give Kit credit for that. Richard Hoyser, he said, well, let's judge guns. That's how the gun judging got started. So that was the origin of the Gunmakers Fair. So I put out some flyers and I started advertising, and all at once the feedback, I could see the number of craftsmen that wanted to participate and so forth. And I thought at that time we didn't have all the cabinets here in the middle of the store.
Okay.
I thought I'd put a few tables out here.
All right.
And I soon it come to obvious, just 2 or 3 months before the fair, this wasn't going to work.
Wasn't big enough.
So one day, Paul Cardinal came in, and he's worked with us for years at the gun fair here. He's the one who puts the tables together out there. So you've met Paul. And he came in one day, and I was telling him about this space problem. He said, rent a tent. I said, rent a tent? I didn't know you could rent tents.
Right.
So the first tent out front was rented the first year, and that filled up with craftsmen. Then we had the gun judging inside.
Right.
We had the guns laid here on tables. And so then we locked up the store around noon so Richard and his people could judge guns. Well, the people had come over the country to buy merchandise. They were beating, rattling on the door. They were trying to judge guns. We had no air conditioning those days, and it was hot and steaming here. In fact, the picture that was taken that time, you can't see the people's heads. That's how much moisture was in there.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it was like a cloud. So, anyways, that's a little history of the first year of the Gunmakers Fair, and it's just growing from there now. The seminars started. People started arriving, setting up on Friday, and so they'd get together in little groups. And Reeves Goring, being a teacher, would get them together, and he'd start a little conversation. So probably by 85, 86, we were having little impromptu seminars, and then about 87 or so, I made the book here would tell you how this got going. We had the craftsmen at their individual tables, and we'd walk from table to table, and they would explain a phrase of gun building. Okay. So that's how that got started. Right. And then we had a little tent out in the front yard, 12 by 12 was our first seminar tent. Of course, you know how big it is now.
Right.
And then another one grew on the other side of the house. Next thing you know, we had the big seminar tent.
Right.
And so there. Now, about the third year, I met Tom Ames. Had known him before, but he came up one time to me. I remember, never forget. He was coming up this stairwell out here, outside, and I don't know how that conversation got started, but outcome of that was next year we were going to judge horns and backs.
Okay.
And that all was initiated through Tom Aiken. And that's the number of entries in that is large.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And of course with the guns and all, the workmanship is just. The first 3 years, I think the number one gun maker was Keith Castile.
Okay.
And then he retired from competition.
Okay.
And but if you ever studied Keith's work, you know what the level of the competition was the first year.
Oh, my
tough.
goodness.
And it's just gotten tougher since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the level of workmanship inspires others to try their best.
That's right.
And
you know better than we used to say in shooting competition, you know better than your competitor.
Right.
You'll only push yourself as far as the competitor is forcing you to.
No need to take it
him
any further.
Yeah, you've never seen the side to go any further.
Unless somebody's going to
I
outdo
beat
you.
him, I quit. You know,
Yeah.
I don't struggle anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So that's true, whether you're shooting or horns or what, building horns.
Personally, the fair has been a real asset to my own building, and it's been such an inspiration to come here, and a challenge.
Yeah.
Getting my first papers back from the judging.
Yeah.
You know, this is wrong, and this is not right. How could it be? You know, I worked so hard on this, and it just isn't right. And you know, you go back, and next year you build another one.
A classic example is Frank Clark, who run our seminars for several years.
Okay.
His introduction to Gunmakers Fair was, you would have thought, would have run a man off, and just, you know, he would never came back. But he became so involved because of this. He actually conducted the gun seminars for a number of years. He was from Maryland.
Okay.
So he brought a gun in it, a Maryland gun. The famous gunmaker from Maryland, I can't think of his name now. But anyway,
I don't know.
name slipped my mind. Anyways, a copy of it, and of course, when it was judged, it was corrected on some areas. Most likely minor, but there's some areas was corrected. It wasn't right for that particular maker.
Okay.
And he was unhappy about this and told him so. So he went home. Well, then it wasn't a day or two later, whenever he called up to one of the judges and apologized. He said, "I have the gun here, the original gun in my hands." He said, "You're right. I didn't copy it." Exactly. So that's been the reputation of the judges of the gunmakers.
Right. Right.
And just like you said, that apparently you were satisfied with the critiquing that you got.
Well, absolutely. Criticism is hard to take sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But it does make you honest.
Yeah.
If you can accept it and say, okay, this is what I need to do. And it really does perform a wonderful function.
The people
learning.
that are the judges, primarily the Hoyses and the Gables, and here again I'll be forgetting other names.
Bill Cook.
Cook and the fellow that's a gun maker down in Lancaster County. I get in trouble by forgetting his name. Federal gun shop. Paul Allison.
Okay.
These people have handled, especially the Hoyses and Gables, have handled more guns and studied more guns over a period of the last 50 years.
Right.
An accumulation of 200 or 300 years of knowledge here between these guys, and they've been here in the, you might say, the bottleneck or the apex of the gun builders, and handled these guns when they before they became so priceless that you don't have that opportunity now.
Right.
And they study the differences between the makers and so forth.
Right.
So the judges have come from an honest
absolutely.
background, sincere background.
Absolutely, and this is out of their own goodness of their own heart that they do this.
They do it from the heart. They don't get money.
Right.
As you well know, nobody gets paid. They there's 200 or 300 people that work at the Gunmakers Fair, and they all do it because they love the art of the Pennsylvania long rifle.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, they'll all tell you, they would not do this for money. They would not ruin their sport and their spiritual feeling for this for the dollar. It's because they love the art and they love to passing on the knowledge to other people. That's very unique with these people. All the people in muzzleloading have
Yeah, it's
the
a
teaching.
It's a brotherhood in a way.
It is. It has become a brotherhood.
And
yeah.
It's very.
There's no secrets with these people.
No, I don't find that.
No.
Everybody will bend over backwards to help.
And per capita, there's probably a higher level of artistic abilities in this small group of people that make the gunmakers fair.
Right.
I would say this, and then any place in the world, and you don't know it.
Yeah.
They're dressed in common everyday clothes and not here with a big sign. Look how great I am. You never hear it. You never know it.
No.
You don't know who Tom Curran is, or Keith Castile, or any of the other names.
No.
You
just within the circle.
Within a circle where you know.
Yeah.
If you walk up to them, they got a gun, and you'll be looking at the gun, and you won't even know they built it until you finally get in the conversation. Oh, you built this gun, because they're not saying, "Hey, I built it. Look like that." You don't see that.
No. You mentioned something about the. It just made me think of where is this going? Where is the long rifle going?
That's not in the long rifle, or the.
Well, the gunmakers fair, the pursuit of this hobby. Where.
Let's look down the road. If you speak of Romans' time, in the Roman era, whenever you're studying ancient history, whenever you speak over a span of 200 or 300 years, in your mind it's like one day.
Right.
So, in the future of 200 or 300 years, the current gunmakers, current artists, is going to be considered simply late-day gunmakers.
Right.
It's the difference between 1850 and 1900, 1908, or 2008.
Right.